It's the Defenders and Renegades at the UFL HQ in Arlington. This one currently a pick. Total, our highest of the week at 43.5. Forecast looks like 81 and partly cloudy, and some sustained winds up to 20 miles per hour. Let's start with that Renegade offense. They have all their skill position guys back from the squad who did put up 35 points in the XFL championship game win against DC last May. They also had 396 total yards that night. We're not going to focus solely on that, or else I'd probably walk off the set within 5 minutes. We're moving forward. So let's talk about this year and how the Defenders and Renegades match up. There's things, believe it or not, this season that Arlington is actually doing better than they were last year, even though they've started 0-2 with the league's toughest schedule. You got to give that to them. It starts with Luis Perez and this pass game. Luis is completing 70% of his passes, 11 yards of completion, and he's spreading the wealth. 10 different receivers in the box score last week. And when you got that 4-receiver set of Javonte Bateman, Deontay Burnett, you can throw Tyler Vaughn's out there and Sal Cannella, who caught a touchdown pass last week. That's very comparable to what DC faced in week 1 with the San Antonio Brahmas, and we saw how that went for them. Perez can go for 300 yards here against a pass defense that has some questions after the first 2 weeks of the season. You might be surprised to hear Renegades, number 1 offense in the league on third down, is 0-2. 54.5%. They're actually the only team in the UFL that's hitting above 50% on third down conversions. So we'll see how that contrasts with a really stout third down defense from DC. It's a down that Greg Williams will stress. DC only allowing opponents to under 20%. They're like 4 for 21 on defensive third downs. So I did give a slight edge to the Arlington offense against St. Louis's defense last week, and we saw kind of how that turned out. They delivered. It was not the offense that lost the Renegades that game in the Battle Dome. So I'm going to do it again here. Slight edge to the Arlington offense over the DC defense. The problem with the offense here is it's a non-existent run game. I haven't seen it yet, and we didn't see it last season either, so expect more Lindsey Scott Jr. to come in and fill that void. We were huge on him coming into last week, talked extensively about him. He scores a rushing touchdown, and he was very valuable on those point-after attempts. So look for Lindsey Scott. I think he could be a difference maker when it comes to this sort of game on what DC is going to prepare for. Again, that third down defense for the Defenders is for real. In fact, it probably won them the game against Houston, as we're seeing some of the footage here. To only have 2 games in, especially against San Antonio, who's one of the better offenses of the league in week 1, and to only give up 4 combined third downs in 2 weeks of action, I think Greg Williams is onto something. And I know there's been a lot of comments this week about his play calling and about going cover 0 on the final play of that game. It's high risk, high reward. We fly by the seat of our pants with Greg Williams. And when it pays off in absolute dividends for this defense. But Arlington's offense is surely underrated. And I do think, much like the last 2 meetings against DC, they will be able to put up some points. Let's take a look at the DC offense against a Renegade defense here who, honestly, hasn't really stopped anybody. Arlington is struggling on that side of the ball. And it's crazy to me because they look like one of the better defenses in the league in that first quarter against Birmingham. They turned over the Stallions. They looked really solid, but I think this is where DC has the edge offensively in this game. I know the loss of Abram Smith has made a massive impact, and it's really rearing its ugly head through the first 2 weeks here, and the other backs haven't quite looked the part. Defenders just the 6th rushing offense in the league with a dismal 3.2 yards per carry. But at its core, this is a run scheme. So it's only a matter of time, similar to last season, where they start settling in, figuring out the run blocking, figuring out how to get those tailbacks in holes. And I think that can only go up from here every week. This does seem like the perfect week to start establishing the run. If you're the Defenders, considering Arlington was gashed for 183 rushing yards in week 1. And last weekend, they go against a third-string running back, and he was out there looking like Aaron Jones in the open field. And I'm not taking any credit away from Mateo Durant. What he did was phenomenal, but, man, that Arlington run defense is a question mark. And the schedule has been brutal. They've faced 2 really tough teams, but, you know, plus they had the largest spring football crowd ever rooting against them, so that's certainly tough. But that doesn't change the fact that this defense, as you just saw, last against the pass, last against the run, and once again missing a few starters to injury on that side of the ball, which we warned you about that last week, that St. Louis was going to be able to take advantage of that. And guys, this becomes a real opportunity for Jordan Ta'amu to get some revenge. And, you know, there isn't a couple of injury notes to keep an eye on for that DC offense. One was Kiki QT, who was banged up last week, but should be able to go. If not, Ty Scott will be counted on yet again. He's emerged as DC's leading receiver, and he's not even a starter. Chris Rowland is another guy you want to keep your eye on. I thought he played really well coming in for Puka Williams last week. And Briley Moore. Let me give a minute to Briley Moore. Congratulations getting the UFL to the top of the Sports Center top 10. That is something that spring football has not done yet. And Briley Moore, not even with Jake Bates, which we were shocked that the 62-yard field goal, or actually it was what, 65? Was not, 64, was not a number 1 play. It absolutely should have been. Kickers get no love. But only the very next week, Briley Moore made sure that the UFL was on the top 10 radar. So shout out him. I think big improvement for the DC offense from week 1 to week 2 is the theme here. Pretty sizable edge to the Defenders offense over the Renegades defense. And you put together everything we just talked about, you get points, and you're going to get a lot of points. There's a reason this is the highest total of the week. You look at last season, I think we had a 28-26 game in DC week 9, and then XFL title game was 35-26. Everybody's worried about the winds in North Texas. They've been practicing outside in them all week, and Texas is always windy in April, it seems, the last couple of years. So I'm not too concerned about the wins in this one. Of course, my Defenders are the pick here. They opened as a 2-point favorite. They actually end up a dog, sort of. It's kind of a pick. But, man, that over is looking sexy, Zook.
You're not going to like my response to this. I think Arlington just got that scheme. I think they use it the same way they did last year in the championship game. Your offense has only gotten worse. And I know that you're saying...
Yeah. You're still stuck on this Arlington made the blueprint to beat DC thing, aren't you?
I'm not stuck on it. I'm just saying that I think Stoops figured it out, and your offense got worse. Now Arlington's defense got worse.
Yeah.
So
Renegades still taking some money, though. I mean, like I said, they opened up a 2-point dog. Now at -1, you could still get the Renegade money line for cheaper than you can get DC, but it seems like a coin flip from odds makers' eyes.